Thank you so much, Prince. Actually, I'm humbled and pleased that you go to church. So I can't be blamed that I have people who don't worship in the staff component of the department. Let me echo your sentiments, Prince, and thank members of the media for responding positively to our call to share with them the new admissions regulations that have just recently been approved by the Gauteng legislature, and they are now en route to be gazetted, which simply means that after being gazetted, they will come into effect immediately. When our forebears gathered at that historic event in Kliptown in 1955 to adopt the Freedom Charter, they specifically declared that the doors of learning and culture will be opened for all. This was followed by various activities in the 1970s, in particular the 1976 uprisings. And in the 1980s, students across the country, under the banner of COSAS, that is the Congress of South African Students, took this battle to the streets. Unfortunately, the then government responded violently, and in the process, students such as Vincent Chabalala, Hector Peterson, Keifas Nyoka, Emma Sateche, Hendrik Nguna, Brian Mbulelo Mazibugo, Sekelo Tlomo, Bani Mulokwane, paid the highest price for these doors of education and culture to be open. This year, as we celebrate the 40th anniversary of COSAS, we felt it appropriate to tribute this victory of opening all our schools to all our children as part of ensuring that the struggles of those that died and those that gathered in that historic event in Kliptown, those struggles are not in vain. We remain the first and probably the only province to have promulgated these admissions regulations that allows our children to be allowed to share our facilities equally, but also to get access to exclusive or what we call quality education easily. To that end, the Gauteng Department of Education is pleased to announce the approval of the regulations on school admissions, including the newly determined feeder zones by the Gauteng legislature. It is important to note that since the oversight by the legislature and endorsement by the legislature of the department, we are now ready to gazette and make the amendments and the regulations official. We'll make these documents available on our website so that everyone can access them and understand all the issues that we have raised. Let's go on to explain what these regulations and the new changes mean. The commencement of the amended regulations will effectively, from the date of application, make the following changes to the education system. One, that the power to admit or not to admit a learner will now be administered by the head of the department rather than by the school governing body. You will recall in the past we had this battle of interpretation between the school governing bodies and the HOD. The school governing bodies, yes, they will still play a role, but the final arbiter, the final decision maker, will be the HOD, assisted by our district officers. The new legislation formally outlaws all forms of unfair discrimination that is based either on language, culture, health status, financial status, or any other thing that is contradictory to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. The regulation delegates the authority of determining feeder zones to the department rather than the school. So gone are the days where schools say, this school, if learners pass from this primary school, they will come to my school. We will determine the feeder zones, and that legislation empowers the HOD. Fourthly, all admissions policies and feeder zones policies of the schools becomes obsolete, which simply means that they are no longer in force. And every school will be given the opportunity to submit their new admissions policies or language policies to the HOD, and the department is obligated that within 90 days they need to respond to approve or not approve those admissions policies, which basically means all the admissions policies that are not in compliance with the new feeder zones, the likelihood of them being approved by the department is zero. That each and every school policy now needs to be submitted to the HOD, and the HOD will then approve or not approve those policies. And the new regulations enables the management of admissions in entry phase grades through an online registration process. You'll recall that we introduced an online registration that was not appropriately in line with some of the regulations that we have now aligned it to the new regulations so that there's no excuse of saying we've got online registration or no online registration. Finally, there are technical adjustments to bring it in line with the court case judgment. We are quite aware that what we are releasing now, because I've seen other organizations like AfriForum already trying to say or threatening to take these regulations to court. You can't take something to court that is a court judgment. These regulations are a court judgment or a constitutional court judgment. We are just complying on the basis of requesting the court to clarify some of the issues. So this regulations also clarifies criteria of placement of learners. You'll see they're very detailed, and they explain how learners will be placed within our schooling environment. So gone are the days where our people are told that we were born in a wrong area, or you're born in a township or rural area, and therefore you can't be admitted in a school that is outside the 5-kilometer radius. Gone are the days that our people will be excluded from entering quality schools purely because they speak a different language or they come from a different cultural grouping. Gone will be the days where our children will not be allowed to go to a certain school on the basis that that school feels that they are full even if they are not full. That decision to declare that the school is full or not full now lies with the HOD. These processes or these regulations, before they came into effect, we went through an extensive consultation process. The consultative process for the feeder zone determination was accommodative to everyone who participated. I established a feeder zone task team consisting of officials from the department, but we also invited external stakeholders like all governing body associations, including the National Association of School Governing Body, the Federation of South African School Governing Bodies, and GPF. We also brought in States SA, Equal Education. We also brought the Office of the Premier, GCRA, and also the Municipal Demarcation Board so that they can assist us in the demarcation of this new feeder zone. Accordingly, about 2,067 maps were finalized and published. However, about 334 schools contested their proposed feeder zones, and fortunately, their concerns were addressed. We must emphasize that the adjudicating process was in favor of 90% of the schools that contested and recommended adjustment, which were later implemented and accommodated. The remaining 10% schools unfortunately misinterpreted their feeder zones, confusing the 30-kilometer radius with the feeder zone determination, which was not provided in terms of the criteria for determining feeder zones. The confusion was swiftly resolved. The department has considered the following principles, which emanate from the analysis of the South African education policies when determining the most suitable policy options to implement in the delimiting of feeder zones. 1, community ownership of schools. 2, community embeddedness that encourages parental support from the community and promote community ownership of the school. During the admission application process, the said amended regulations are intended to assist learners to access the school in compliance with the set criteria, which are 1, if the place of residence is closest to the school within the feeder zone. 2, the learner or the parent has a sibling in the school. 3, the placement of employment of at least one parent of the applicant is within the feeder zone. 4, learner's place of residence is within 30-kilometer radius of the school. Indeed, this will depend on the space availability. And lastly, which is 5, learner's place of residence is beyond 30-kilometer radius of school, once more space availability will be a determining factor. Approval of the said regulations implies that our schools will be easily transformed. As such, learners will access quality education and be treated the same way, which will also necessitate same opportunities. The publication of feeder zone dictates that schools will have to submit the admissions policies to the HOD for ratification within 90 days. However, there will be a transitional arrangement for almost 2 months to allow schools to understand and to move from their current policies to the new policies. And we are also convening a meeting of all SGBs to release this regulation, to also release what we call a pro forma statement or pro forma regulation, so that all those that wants to revisit their policies, they can comply with that pro forma statement, so that they know whether they are right or not. The feeder zone determination play a significant role in ensuring that access to our schools is fair, transparent, and conducted in an equitable manner. Our officials and stakeholders contributed immensely to this successful consultative process, and we are excited that all their concerns that they raised during this vigorous process were addressed and considered. We want to thank all the SGB associations, all government institutions, in particular States SA, the Demarcation Board, the Office of the Premier, GCRA, and all other organizations that contributed to these regulations. We further want to thank NGOs that participated in this process, like Equal Education, who were friends of the court when we went to the Constitutional Court to deal with this matter. Their contribution assisted a lot in ensuring that these regulations are finally a reality. Today, fellow South Africans and the people of Gauteng, we are releasing a freedom that will ensure never and never again our children will be discriminated on the basis of where they were born or the color of their skin or the language that they speak. We are excited as a department that as we celebrate the 40th anniversary of COSAS, we can proudly say the doors of learning and culture have been opened for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, MEC, on that note. We will now allow for questions. Please ask your question by